Ever feel like our modern world is kind of built on these like ancient ideas?
Mm,
Well, get this. Today, we're going deep
yeah.
on founding documents,
I like it.
those rule books from way back when,
Yeah.
to see how they, believe it or not, still shape your life today.
Right.
We're talking Magna Carta,
Yeah.
English Bill of Rights, even the Mayflower Compact.
It's exciting, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And you know what? These aren't just dusty relics gathering dust in a museum somewhere.
Right.
We're talking about revolutionary concepts,
Okay.
like limited government and individual rights, things that challenge the very idea of absolute power.
See, this is what I love. It's like we're uncovering these hidden connections
Absolutely.
between history and our lives.
Yeah.
But let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What exactly are founding documents? And why should we care about them centuries later?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So imagine the original blueprints for a house.
Okay.
The ones that lay out the structure, the essential elements.
Right.
Founding documents are kind of like that for a society.
Okay.
They outline a vision, a set of rules and principles that the people agree to live by.
Gotcha.
The bedrock of a functioning and, ideally, just society, right?
Okay, so instead of just having a king dictate everything,
Yeah.
these documents were about establishing
Right.
a more balanced system
Yeah.
with limitations on power.
That's the idea.
Am I getting warmer?
You're getting very warm.
Uh,
It's about codifying those limitations, putting them in writing,
Yeah.
and agreeing on them as a society.
Right.
I mean, we take these things for granted now.
Yeah.
The right to a fair trial, limits on what the government can do. These were radical ideas back then.
Totally.
Take the Magna Carta,
Okay.
signed in 1215. King John probably wasn't too thrilled about being forced to sign that one.
Yeah, I bet not. I can imagine.
Yeah.
It was probably the nobles, right? Being like, enough is enough with the absolute power trip, John.
Yeah, something like that.
Very much.
The Magna Carta was a pivotal moment
Okay.
because it established, maybe for the first time in such a clear way,
Yeah.
that even a king wasn't above the law.
Right.
Trial by jury,
Mm.
protection against unfair taxes.
Yeah.
Concepts we consider basic rights today
Right.
were considered revolutionary back then.
Wow.
A direct challenge to the existing power structure.
It's mind-blowing how those early power struggles still resonate today,
Right.
even if the players have changed.
Mm.
It makes you realize that the fight for a balanced system,
Yeah.
for limits on power, it's an ongoing process, right?
100%.
It's not just
It's not a destination, it's a journey.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These concepts didn't just appear overnight.
Right.
They were hard-won victories, often born out of conflict and a desire for something more. That's why understanding those struggles is so important.
Mm.
It helps us appreciate the fragility of those rights and the constant need to safeguard them. Yeah. And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Fast forward a few centuries,
Okay.
and these radical ideas about limited government and individual rights, they found fertile ground in the American colonies.
So how do we go from a king begrudgingly signing the Magna Carta
Yeah.
to those colonists just like declaring independence a few centuries later?
Right.
Did someone like sneak those rebellious documents onto a ship bound for the New World?
It's a great question.
Like, how did they even know?
Right. Well, you could say the seeds of rebellion were already planted
Okay.
because the colonists, even though they were miles away,
Right.
they still considered themselves Englishmen,
Okay.
entitled to the same rights and freedoms.
Which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly how the king saw it.
Not exactly, no.
Okay.
But that disconnect is key.
Okay.
The colonists were starting to develop their own identity,
Okay.
their own ideas about self-governance.
Uh-huh.
And documents like the Mayflower Compact, for example, while they might seem like simple agreements on the surface,
Right.
were actually radical in their implications.
Okay. Remind me about the Mayflower Compact.
Yeah.
It was more than just an agreement about who was bringing what to the first Thanksgiving, right?
Way more than that. It was a group of people far from home saying, hey, we're going to create our own rules for how we govern ourselves.
Wow.
That idea of self-government,
Okay.
of the people having a say in how they're ruled, that's huge.
Right.
It set a precedent for what would come later.
Yeah, it's like that moment on a group project where everyone realizes,
Yeah.
wait, we can actually do this ourselves. We don't need to rely on the professor for all the answers.
I love that analogy.
Right.
And speaking of doing things themselves, enter Thomas Paine.
Okay.
His pamphlet, Common Sense.
Yeah.
It was like the viral blog post of 1776.
Okay.
Paine argued that being ruled by a king across an ocean was, well, kind of
Right.
ridiculous. And his words struck a chord with the colonists.
So he basically provided the intellectual fuel for the fire that was already starting to burn.
Exactly. He articulated what many were already feeling, but maybe hadn't dared to say out loud.
Right.
And it's important to remember,
Yeah.
this was all happening against the backdrop of those earlier struggles for freedom,
Right.
enshrined in documents like the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights.
Uh-huh.
Those principles were in the air, shaping the conversations and fueling the desire for a different kind of government.
Okay, so the seeds are planted, the fire is lit.
Right.
But how does religious liberty fit into all of this?
Okay.
It feels like we've jumped from kings and charters to something deeply personal.
And that connection is crucial. You see, religious liberty wasn't just some add-on to those broader principles of liberty.
Right.
It was woven into the very fabric of those early documents, even if they didn't always explicitly use that term.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So how did those early documents, which weren't specifically about religious freedom, lay the groundwork for what would become a cornerstone of American identity?
Well, remember how the Magna Carta limited the king's power,
Yes.
even in matters related to the church?
Right.
That's significant because it established that even the monarch wasn't all-powerful, especially when it came to matters of individual conscience.
So it kind of planted the seed for the idea that your inner beliefs, like your conscience,
Right.
were something the government just couldn't trample on.
Exactly. And let's not forget about, those who came to America seeking religious freedom.
Right.
The Pilgrims, the Puritans, all those groups fleeing persecution in Europe.
Right.
Their very presence here,
Yeah.
their desire to create a society where they could worship freely,
Right.
that profoundly shaped, I think, the American DNA when it comes to religious liberty.
Yeah.
They were living proof that this wasn't just some abstract ideal, but a fundamental human right worth fighting for.
It's like their journey across the ocean just became a testament to how important that freedom was to them.
Absolutely. And, that brings us to the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
Right.
This didn't come out of nowhere, right?
Right.
It's the culmination of centuries of struggle,
Yeah.
of people pushing back against authority, demanding the right to their own beliefs.
So it's like those early documents, like those struggles against absolute power,
Yeah.
really created the soil in which religious liberty could flourish here in America.
A perfect analogy. And remember, this wasn't just about religion.
Right.
It was about the very nature of government,
Okay.
about drawing those lines in the sand and saying, this far, no further.
Right.
If the government could dictate your relationship with something as personal as your faith,
Yeah.
what couldn't it control?
It's like that old saying, give them an inch and they'll take a mile.
Exactly. Safeguarding religious liberty was about protecting all those other freedoms that we hold dear.
Right.
It was about ensuring that individuals had a sphere of autonomy,
Okay.
a space where they could live according to their own conscience, free from government interference.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
We've uncovered these like fascinating connections
Yeah.
between these ancient documents and our modern lives.
Right.
And it's clear these ideas, they continue to shape, who we are as a nation,
Yeah,
but also who we are as individuals.
absolutely.
What's the takeaway for the average person listening? Just trying to make sense of it all.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
These founding principles,
Yeah.
they're not static, they're not set in stone, right?
Right.
They require constant interpretation, debate,
Right.
even reimagination as our world changes.
Yeah.
That's our responsibility as citizens,
Yeah.
as inheritors of this incredible legacy.
So it's like those founding fathers handed us this incredible toolbox.
Yeah,
But it's up to us to figure out how to use the tools in our own time.
precisely. And just like any tool, those principles can be used for good or ill.
Right,
It
yeah.
all depends on how we understand them,
Right.
how we apply them, how we fight for them.
Right.
That's the challenge and the opportunity facing each generation.
This has been an incredible journey, to say the least.
It has been fun.
We've traveled from the signing of the Magna Carta to the American Revolution,
I know, right?
all the way to our modern day lives.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how those historical threads, they kind of weave together into this tapestry of freedom and self-governance.
And remember, those threads are still being woven today, right?
Right.
It's an ongoing process, a conversation that each generation must have.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with.
It is.
So listeners, as you go about your day today,
Yeah.
remember those ancient documents,
Yeah,
those hard-won battles for liberty,
absolutely.
and ask yourself, How can you be a part of weaving that tapestry,
That's right.
of ensuring that those principles, those ideals, continue to thrive in our ever-changing world?
That's the homework assignment for all of us.
I love it. Until next time,
Yeah.
happy deep diving.
Bye, everybody.